Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. So listeners who've been wondering where Joel and I have been the last month or so, 4 weeks ago, I decided to, people know I'm a dancer, I decided to take a class in country two-step. And the only time I could take the class, it was the only class available in the area, was on the night that Joel and I record. So Joel very kindly said, well, go ahead and take the class. And that's where we've been for the last 4 weeks. But we're back tonight. And I got to tell you guys, you're tuning in for the right episode, because Joel and I usually don't talk about our shows before we get going. We just kind of show up and we just do a topic, whatever comes to our mind. He sent me a text and said, I want to do a show on rumination. And I thought to myself, rumination, ooh, that has all kinds of possibilities. And I'm sorry, Joel, I have to ask you the loaded question, but how long have you been ruminating on this?
Well, you know me, probably way too much. I don't know.
Way too much. Okay.
And, it's great to see you again. Great to see our audience again. I really enjoy our shows.
Me too.
And I'm glad hopefully you become, the master dancer in that genre that you described.
Let's just say that I can now do the basic. We'll just leave it at that. Okay.
That's a master compared to me.
Okay.
So I have no basics there. So, but one of the things over the last month in my practice is I've noticed a lot of ruminating, and for people that, be wise to Google rumination or ruminating. But the brain basically can get stuck in a pattern of circular or looped thinking, and it's almost all, and rumination is negative. And it could be about anything. You can have a breakup and then replay the breakup a million times over and over in your head. That's where I hear it the most.
Sure.
She broke up with me.
Yeah.
You replay the breakup conversation over and over again. If I'd have done this differently. And so what the brain is trying to do, the brain is protective. It has a mechanism it's also a predictor, and it wants to have an answer. So in a sense, rumination is almost like the brain taking itself to court. It's litigating an event over and over. Usually, and rumination isn't caused by one part of the brain, but is caused a lot of times by the parts of the brain, the various parts of the brain not communicating and doing the way it's supposed to be. So one leads to another, which leads to another, and you get stuck in this pattern, which seems necessary. It seems like it's productive, but all you do is think about the same topic over and over. Mm-hmm. And this can lead to anxiety, it can lead to depression. And it also has, and we'll touch on this a little later what I'm thinking, but I'm explaining the concept now, but it also has a big impact on your relationship with the law of attraction, whether you realize it or not. I mean, it's because rumination is, I must be a loser. This is the second woman that broke up with me doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
What did I say? She didn't give me closure. And you think about it over and over, or I lost that job, or it's just the various scenarios. Like one of my young men that I was working with, he was at school and he was doing this, they had a little talent show and he was doing this thing on a skateboard and he fell and everybody laughed. And he said, I don't know if I can go back to school. And I'm like, they think you're cool. If you had the courage to stand in front of this whole school and do that, and he, from all accounts, he did a great job, but he did fall at one point. But he couldn't focus on the tricks he accomplished and got a standing ovation. He could just focus on the one trick he missed and how pathetic he thought he looked. And it was really hard to get him to reframe it and to think about it in a different way because it was really bothering him. And an average person listening may say, well, that's ridiculous. But most of the things we ruminate to someone else sounds minimal. But to us, whatever we're ruminating on, it just gets, it's like a computer just trying to figure something out. And it's just spinning and spinning and spinning, or trying to load something that has an error and it won't load. And the brain is just is desperate. It can wake you up in the middle of the night. I know people that think about the same topic when they go to bed, when they wake up, it keeps them from sleeping. Rumination is a thing that is unique to human beings because of the structure of our brain. A bear says, ooh, I ate food, I need to go sleep, have some sex, and eat more food. And if a bear misses a catch or whatever, or if something gets away, the bear doesn't just sit around going, I am the worst bear in the world. I'm not doing bear shit very well. I'm really not a good bear. It doesn't do that. It just goes find something else to eat.
Mm,
But humans, we tend to do that. We tend to label. We have that inner dialogue that's negative. So a lot of people say, well, what you're describing is overthinking. This is a form of overthinking, but it goes to the next level.
mm,
Overthinking is when you're thinking a lot about a lot of different things and you're looking at different scenarios. Rumination tends to be stuck on one or a few things that we just keep playing over and over, and we're almost always the bad guy in the story.
yeah.
I need to do this. She must. I will never have another relationship because she was perfect.
Mm,
Or I hear this with my, especially with social media. They'll break up, and then you'll look at the social media of your ex, and they're apparently doing all these fun things. You have a narrative that they're doing all these fun things, and it's not accurate. But
hmm.
that's what your cycle of thinking. So I have really been doing deep dives with a lot of my clients over rumination and how it affects their quality of life. I don't know if you know a lot of ruminators, but there's a many out there. A lot of a lot of people who had childhood trauma
Sure.
ruminate. I don't think it's really limited. I can't find one commonality, but it is interesting to see the number of people that it really does affect, and it's outrageous. It drastically lowers quality of life.
Yeah. And well, you're reminding me of somebody I knew. He didn't like calling it rumination. He called it marinating. And it was an interesting choice of words, I thought, because I mean, marinate is something you usually apply at a cookout. And how appropriate that basically what he's doing is, when he's marinating, he's basically roasting himself over a spit.
It it it's not. I mean, it's technically not correct, but it is in theory correct,
Yeah.
because you are just soaking it in. You're just totally smothering
Hmm.
the what you're cooking, that's marinating, and then you eventually cook it, you grill it.
Yeah.
And so the ruminating is the same thing. The older generation did call it various things, and marinating is what you'll hear, and I'll marinate on that a lot, and
Yeah.
it's often just a misspeak because it's ruminating.
Right. Yeah, I tried to avoid doing that. He'd get pissed when I would point out something that was inaccurate in the terminology, so I just kind of stayed away from that part.
Yes,
But
yes.
because I didn't want to give him something else to marinate
he,
or
he,
ruminate on,
he would
depending on which one
marinate
it was
on
going to
that,
be.
but he would marinate in on you saying it's ruminating. So
Yeah, right.
uh but that process is, especially when there's a lot of stuff going on. And I have a couple of questions that I don't have answers to, but I like to ask the questions. I believe, and I have no evidence of this, but I've talked to a lot of doctors. I believe social media today exacerbates I almost said marination.
Nice. Sorry, I got you on a new tack
Yeah,
there.
I think it exacerbates rumination. I really,
Yeah.
because it gives you stuff that supports the conspiracy theory that you're
Oh, yeah.
I'm fat, or I don't look as good as this. One of my young ladies that I work with is this very smart, talented young lady. She's about to be a doctor, and she has this very negative dialogue, and she ruminates on her appearance, and I'm
Mm,
not the best doctor, and I'm not this, and it's just this endless cycle of just basically putting herself on trial that
yeah.
is never going to have a verdict.
And I mean, I think probably all of us at one point or another have experienced something along that line. I know I have, particularly after I experienced the loss of my business, the crash, 2008 financial crisis, and so forth. Because there was a time there where I'm pretty much doing that every single day.
Yes.
And honestly, it's what led to me starting the podcast, because I was pretty trapped by my own thought processes. I didn't realize that I had done that, and that's a key point. It
Yes.
had not occurred to me that I had done that to myself. In fact, I remember, I recall very vividly saying to my ex-wife, my wife at the time, that it felt like I was being haunted by somebody who had cursed me or something like that.
Yes.
It never occurred to me that I had been the one who was repeatedly doing the cursing every single day.
You were the source of the cursing.
Yeah. But that never thought, the thought literally never crossed my mind. In
Right.
fact, I think she even brought it up at one point, and my mind just instantly dismissed it. Like I
Right.
just couldn't even go there.
Well, and I know 12-year-olds that ruminate severely. I mean, it really affects their quality of life. I know 80-year-olds that ruminate,
Mm.
and the usually the causes of the thoughts of rumination are much different between the 12 and the 80s, but nonetheless, it's just this very circular looped thinking that
Yeah,
has that there's no way out. It's like I don't know if you've ever been in rush hour of the 405 in Los Angeles.
I have not, but I've been in others, so I know what they're
Okay,
like. Yep.
so it's this big loop, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And if you're on the inside and it's rush hour, it might be next Thursday before you get to the
You're
outside.
done. Yeah.
It's just you just have to keep going in the circle until you get lucky enough or just get the courage enough to go right on over. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just that's the way it operates. When you understand that our brain is trying to do us a favor, it wants an answer because we often perceive that we were harmed or there was danger or what have you
Right.
because of the emotional trauma, or for lack of a better word. So it's trying to solve it. It's trying to let's come up with this, and what is going to be the solution? And let me think about what were the exact words of her breaking up? Or
Mm-hmm.
the other thing in today's world, I know people that will reread text chains over and over, trying to figure out when was the change, what happened,
Oh,
what
right,
was,
right.
and it's a pointless endeavor, but it is a very distracting. You can't perform life when you're in constant rumination of just these things that are out of your control. It's just and so being able to break away from that is really really important, and also learning when you apply it to a law of attraction concept. So the rumination, we have an emotional response to the rumination that matches, I'm a loser. I am this. Nobody loves me. I'm not lovable. I'm terrible at my job. And that's an emotion that the law of attraction then starts picking up, going, oh, I didn't know we were a loser. No, we're a loser now. So law of attraction does stuff to make us appear to be losers because that's
Mm-hmm.
what we're saying or that's what we're feeling, and that's the energy vibration we're putting out. So that's a big thing.
It is a very big thing. Well, it also occurs to me that there's another area, a very large area that we haven't touched on that I strongly suspect rumination plays a large role in. And I don't ever recall having discussed it, even though we've talked about health issues, not just you and me, but other co-hosts here on the show and guests. We've talked about health from a wide range of angles. I don't think we've ever talked about rumination in this regard, but how many people with chronic health conditions ruminate on their health conditions and
I would.
reinforce them?
I'm going to throw a completely random number out, made up number, just to give you it's 93.7%.
Okay.
Yeah, just throwing that out there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made it up, by the way. Just I felt it needed to be a high number, but not 100%. So, all kidding aside, I can't imagine one of the biggest problems. I told you a long time ago a story about my friend in Florida. His name Steve,
Mm-hmm.
and Steve had he's 5 or 6 years younger than I am. He's same basic person as me, a hard worker, works out, law of attraction mindset, gets up every day and does he's one of those guys that, he'll be there, beyond everybody else. If he's just that guy.
I think I remember which story this is, and I like this story.
Yeah. So I get a call. Times is getting really diluted for me, but it's probably been about 10 years ago this took place. So I get a call from his wife and said, we got some shocking news today. She said, Steve was diagnosed with liver cancer.
Mm.
He doesn't drink. He doesn't. And I'm like, no. She goes, yeah. And she said, he's devastated. And she said, it was just we don't have the stage yet. But basically there was an MRI or whatever the scan was that revealed it. So we have an appointment with the oncologist on Friday. So I said, I'm coming down. I said, so this he found out the previous Friday. I found out on Saturday. So when I got there late Thursday night, I went straight to their house and he looked horrible. He was gray. He lost in a week about 12 or 14 pounds. I forget the number, but he was hurting. He said, I'm in a lot of pain. He had not been to the gym. He quit eating the robust, healthy, high protein, high fat, low carb diet that he thrived on. He quit doing all that. And he looked terrible. And I'm like, oh my God. So the next day I wanted to go into the appointment, but the doctor would not let me in. He didn't know me. I don't know why, but probably best he didn't.
We won't even go there.
Yeah. I mean, he might have heard of me. I was, so I am sitting in the lobby with, this, it's at a clinic, and they were going through these tests. And so we were there at 9 a.m. They took him right back. And about 2 p.m., I'm going, where? I go to is everything okay? Did they take him to surgery? And they said, sir, we can't discuss that with you. And I said, I don't know what happened. And nobody's answering my text. So I just sat there. So about 2:15, 2:30, they come out, and they had a weird look on their face. And I said, I was worried they took you back for surgery. I didn't know. And he said, well, they performed multiple scans and multiple blood draws, and they just kept rescanning me. And I said, okay, because there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no cancer. And the only explanation they could come up with was there was a problem. The whoever did the x-ray or the scan at the previous place just mislabeled the person. Now, somebody has liver cancer, but it wasn't Steve. And the point of the story was Steve, in that period of time, his brain was killing him.
Yeah.
He was ruminating on dying. His body was, and our first step was to, we went to Chipotle and ate about 2,000 calories, and we hit the gym and we worked out hard. And within a week, he had his weight back, his color was back. But your mind, and I believe he was in, and you can't help but when you're giving some of these diagnoses, the rumination process is probably automatic.
Yeah.
And so so that's always been a concern to me, that the diagnosis, the time between the diagnosis and treatment options is way too long. People have these things, and the brain starts really interfering with the whole immune system during that. So we've talked about shows about how stress can interfere with your immune system. But imagine an intense belief that you went from perfect health to you're going to be dead in a few months, and all that's going to go, and you're going to have experience all this horrible pain. So the body then starts playing that out. By the way, Steve's perfectly healthy. We talk frequently. He's still hitting the gym hard, and they did follow-up tests just to make sure, and nothing's ever shown up. So
good
he's
for
in great
him.
health.
Yeah, that's great.
But,
I'm really glad for him.
Yeah, but you can
I'm
see that. So the rumination process, when it affects people with severe diagnosis, or even some that aren't severe, but you can make them severe in the ruminating process.
Well, it also illustrates, to me, the bigger illustration here is what can happen with a chronic condition.
Yes.
I mean, his happened pretty quickly. The whole thing played out in a week. I would say that's fairly unusual. I mean, it was also a very extreme story. So, I mean, it's not something that happens every day. But I think what does happen every day is there are, I think it's safe to say, millions of people who experience various kinds of chronic conditions that, if they don't have a really good mindset of the kind that we've talked about here on the show, it's almost a sure thing that over time they're going to decline slowly. That's the nature of these chronic conditions. And as that happens, they're living with it every single day. They're thinking about it every single day. And I'm willing to bet that most of the thoughts that they're having are not positive "I'm getting well" thoughts. Most of them are all the different ways this could go wrong, or the doctor guided them wrong, or maybe they need to change doctors, or there's got to be another therapy out there, or something that just keeps the thought process going of the rumination. This is a terrible thing that's going on, and I can't seem to shake it no matter what I do. And my goodness, this is so terrible, and on and on and on and on.
I completely agree. And that's when you start breaking down sort of the dangers of rumination and the effects it has, it's, I don't know of anyone that's really discussing it from the level we're discussing it at. It's like, we're aware of it, and there's techniques to help divert you from it and move on. And we'll go over those toward the end of the show. But for right now, when you start thinking about it, it's like when your brain is occupied with a pervasive thought that it can't get off of,
Mm,
there's nothing else is going to be taking place. You're not going to be able to build that business or create that new AI or create this new thing, or because
mhm.
your brain is going to be so distracted with trying to solve the puzzle that is unsolvable, and
Right.
there's not going to be an answer there. And I've used the breakup example because it seems to be the leading cause of rumination, but it applies to losing a job,
Oh yeah.
just life in general. It doesn't have to be any one catalyst, but it's almost like it. One of my clients earlier today said, you know, the he broke up with his girlfriend. They broke up, I don't know, 2 months ago, and they literally haven't talked. And he's like, "Well, I think she thinks it's my fault."
Mm,
And I'm like, and he goes, "I just can't. I think I should call her to make sure she knows it's not my fault." And I said, there's because she's not. That's not going to change anything.
mm,
He's like, "Well, she did this and she did this," and he said, "That's all I can think about. I just feel I need to tell her it was her fault." And I said,
mm.
If you need to do that, you think it would be helpful, you're going to start a new cycle, because whatever conversation you're
Yeah.
going to have with her, you're going to ruminate on that when she tells you no, it was your fault, and gives you the reason why. Now that'll kick off that whole storm again.
Yeah, they tend to be self-reinforcing when you go
Yes,
down that path, and
sure.
that's kind of the nature of that form of rumination. But really, it's going to be true of any form of rumination, any topic, any area of your life. The we tend to get a little bit wound up about positive thinking versus negative thinking, and a lot of people kind of get frustrated with it, and I get where they're coming from. But you know what? Chronic negative thinking is rumination.
It is.
I mean, when you boil it down to the very smallest brass tacks at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Well,
And I guess we really shouldn't be surprised that it's going to lead over time to an undesired result.
and that's the case, because when you, and I won't bore you, because of course I've done the neuroscience of what takes place in the brain, and it's very annoying when I talk about stuff like that. But it, it, you have parts of the
I'm
brain.
probably less annoyed by than some other people are, but we're going to be kind to the listeners. Let's put
Yeah,
it that
trust me, I'll get going and they'll be going, "Well,
way.
what the hell?"
Yeah.
So we're going to skip that.
Click,
But
go to the next podcast.
yeah. So this circle of thinking requires the brain to sort of conspire toward this. It's going through, and it's like, oh, this is danger. This is the amygdala is like, oh my goodness, we are in danger here, and so we must figure this out. And the prefrontal cortex is supposed to hop in and go, "Hey guys, let's." It's like, no, you're right. It's like they all get together. We must spend all of our energy thinking on that,
Hmm.
and it just distracts from reality, and it's exhausting as well. There's not a study on this, but again, this is one of the things I think about is the brain on any. There's all kind of studies on this, but the brain, it's generally agreed the brain burns about 20% of the calories that we take in a day.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, very high for the be a just a organ that doesn't move. It just
Yeah.
sits there, but it
Disproportionately high percentage.
yeah,
Mhm.
it seems very weird that it would spend that much. But so, and also, I am also a believer that somebody probably just took a wild swing at that and said 20%. But
I get that. I can kind of imagine there are times where it's closer to 80% for me.
well,
So
that
I'm
so
sympathetic to what you're saying.
yeah, imagine you're going exactly where I was thinking. So imagine the exhausted nature of rumination, because
Mm,
whatever that number is of calories that the brain, or energy that the brain burns, has to be increased when the brain just will not let up.
right.
The
Right.
cortisol stress that is released from that is constantly trying to keep up with the perceived threat, and
Mhm,
so the fight or flight keeps trying to kick in,
mhm.
releasing cortisol and adrenaline, and that is an exhausting process for those that go through that.
Well, not only would it be exhausting process for you, it'd be exhausting for anybody who knows you.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that this is the kind of thing that spills over into so you talked about relationships. This will spill over into all kinds of relationships, not just primary relationships. All relationships it'll spill over into.
well, it's we've all had that friend. There was a guy, his years ago. He I used to work out in the evenings, and it was this the same group of people, families and everything worked out every night. The gym was packed. And so this guy, his first name's Will. Him and his wife were inseparable. And then one day he comes in and says, she broke up with me. We were all supportive. Well, after about 2 months of him wanting to tell the story to us every time we saw him.
Yeah. It kind of wears.
We started running from him. And so there was a joke that I asked a friend one day after about 2 months of this, I said, oh, by the way, did you hear Will broke up with? We just laughed.
You have one of those senses of humors too. I know you'll do that.
Yeah. And so, the kids back then, these are all grown men now, but the kids that were in the gym, so this one kid, he's probably 13 at the time, his name's Tyler. And so he would work out, we would help him work out. So he was in our group. And so one day he's sitting there, a 12-year-old realized this. So Will starts walking up and Tyler goes, he's about to tell us about his breakup.
That's something that only a 12-year-old can do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 12-year-old role.
Tyler, don't say that out loud because I would have laughed and it's going to seem insensitive. But he did. He came up and he said, yeah, we broke up. Did anybody tell everybody? Yeah, you told us all. The front desk clerk knows about it as well. So, but it's and I'm not making fun of people's breakups, but just when you can't let that go, nobody wants to be around that energy. It doesn't mean that people don't want to help. When you experience your breakup, and we definitely it was serious. We definitely spent the time on it, but we didn't do that for a year.
No, we did it for like a night.
So but it was this way of appropriately handling something. And so rumination, I think today is not talked about as much, but it is very active, and it gets the verbiage of depression and anxiety and overthinking and ADHD and all that. So a lot of those can be contributing factors either direction. Does rumination cause those things, or do those things cause the rumination? I don't think there's a way. I think the answer is probably yes on either side.
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But it definitely affects the quality of life, the quality of life and your mental health as much as anything can.
Well, we always like to find a way to take what we're talking about and talk about, all right, what steps we take to turn it around.
Yes.
Rumination seems fairly straightforward, but we also know it's fairly common. So it's, I guess, not quite so easy to turn around. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so common. But let's talk about it. How do we turn it around?
Well, I'm super prepared tonight, so I have created a little list of things I want to go
through.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, I've never done this before.
This is like headline news here, folks. I don't know if you realize this.
I mean, for me to be excited about a topic that I actually did some pre-show work.
Yeah.
Usually I don't even want to know what the topic is. Let's just go. But tonight, this was exciting. So
wow.
The first thing when you look up, when I talk to doctors and psychiatrists over the last couple of weeks about what is the first step they would recommend. And, almost always they refer to cognitive behavioral therapy, a restructuring or a reframing concept, where you can challenge the thoughts like, I'm a failure. You challenge that with evidence that proves that's not true. So you internally interrupt it. If you ask the next question, if a friend was thinking this, what would I say to the friend? Would I say, yes, you're right? Or would I say, no, how would it be? What support would you give someone that was going through what you did? That's a good way to think of it. Of course, thought stopping or interrupting by having whether you have a visual stop sign or you use your hand, stop it, and then immediately replace it with another thought. It doesn't have to be anything remotely related, but it has to be a countering thought. It doesn't have to be on topic, but it can even be about the football game, but we need to immediately stop it and then bring in another thought to sort of get the brain out of the loop.
Which is why it's really helpful to have somebody to help you do that, because otherwise you're probably going to stay in that rumination trap.
Exactly. And some people prefer the technique, and with my brain, I don't know if this would be helpful or not. But this one doctor from England and I were talking about this, and he believes in allowing for 4 15-minute intervals a day to ruminate.
Okay.
That may work. I'm not
I don't know.
yeah, but it's something he
It
finds.
sounds a little risky, to be honest.
Yeah, it does. It seems, because just I know the way the brain works, and
Mm.
there's a reward system, a negative reward system, nonetheless, but still a reward system. That's almost like, to me, that would be the equivalent of saying an alcoholic's only going to have 1 beer a day.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. But
or,
I just
or,
want
or one beer
to.
every 4 hours. That might be
Yeah,
close to
he
it.
is a very highly decorated doctor from London,
Mm.
and we're really good friends. And so I just thought I'd mention that. But to be honest with you, he's not going to watch this, so I wouldn't do that.
Good thing.
Yeah, we're going to leave him out. So, the other stuff, your basic mindfulness meditations are really good.
Mm.
I'm a big believer in transcendental or natural stress relief meditation. It's the same thing. It's a mantra meditation. It's a distracting concept. You focus on a sound, you think it, and then when your brain gets to the ruminating or other thoughts, you bring it back to your mantra for 20 minutes twice a day. Very effective.
And there's a good reason why that's helpful, because if you're just trying to meditate to calm the mind, chances are you're going to go right back to the topic you're trying to avoid.
And everybody that has ADHD that I deal with, I agree. Mindfulness meditation is a wonderful meditation, but that's really high-end ADHD crazy people. We're not doing that. Mantra meditation gives us a thought, and then we know we're inevitably going to be pulled away from the thought. Then we try to pull ourselves back to the thought, and that process is very effective. We're just trying to clear your brain, and listening to your breathing with what goes on in my brain doesn't work.
And for somebody, even if you're not ADHD, if you're in the midst of a trauma that just happened,
yes,
you're basically in that same mind space that the ADHD is in. You need to have that thing to literally focus on something else, or you're going to get sucked right back.
Well, and another exciting thing is, one of my friends who is a ADHD specialist here in Richmond, he believes that, he said, rumination, he did the chicken and egg theory. He said rumination and ADHD often go together. He said, but also rumination can look just like ADHD because it keeps the brain distracted. You can't focus. So he's seen people that were ruminators that he first diagnosed as ADHD, and turned out they weren't. It was a rumination problem.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
And he's brilliant. And yeah, so I give a lot of credence to what he said. That makes a lot of sense. Then there's observing thoughts, diffusion. You observe the thoughts. There's a concept called ACT, A-C-T, acceptance, commitment therapy, where you accept and you commit. You look at it, you say, that's not accurate. It's similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's more of a just sort of an acceptance of the process.
And acceptance is a powerful thing. I mean, I want to touch on that one for a moment, because there are a lot of teachers in a lot of different realms who talk about acceptance, and they talk about appreciation, and they talk about them in the same sentence at times. And that it's one of those things that's confusing, because especially if we're talking about something relatively negative like rumination, why would you want to appreciate that? Why would you want to accept that?
Yes.
But it's actually a misrepresentation of the acceptance or the appreciation role that's going on. It's not appreciation of the fact that you have this thing that you ruminate on.
Right.
It's appreciation or acceptance of what you're changing it to.
Well, and that's the point. Or even with the the process of grieving. Sometimes grieving is an overwhelming process that's even a higher level. At least it was for me in the loss of my son. So if you have rumination, you can imagine my grieving process was rumination times a million. It was there was nothing else going in my body. I felt nothing. It was just this constant thought about the loss of my son.
Right.
The loss of my son. So you see a lot of that where the brain gets hijacked entirely with what's going on. So grieving has a similar but obviously much more intensive effect on that. And that's an important concept to be aware when you're grieving, is some of these techniques also work with that. I'm also a big believer in, at least in the beginning, early on in grieving, is to fully grieve and just do that. Don't try to fight that stuff. That was my version. Just feel it fully. But that's a different topic. So,
well, it's also a great point. It's worth mentioning, because if you're trying to understand the difference between ruminating and releasing, that's sometimes important to understand that difference.
Yes.
Because releasing literally is giving up on the rumination.
Yes, exactly. The other one that I found, the grounding techniques, what you can identify in a room, what you can smell, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, anything that's distracting in the brain, but just a grounding technique gets you back to where you just to focus on something else. Like I have this pen, I found this pen, or I got this phone case thing holder or whatever. And I had that, I could touch it, feel it. That does change it for a moment at least. Then, of course, my favorite, you're going to love this one. This would be my number one, but I'm giving it in the order that sort of everybody agreed to.
Okay.
Physical activity and strenuous exercise is a wonderful technique in breaking ruminate. I mean, it really helps. Even for people who aren't a big exercise believer, but taking a 10-minute walk can help. An hour in the gym lifting really heavy definitely interrupts those thought patterns. That's really good. Also, the same behavioral strategy, structured environment, schedule, structure. Going to the next one, one thing that if I'm dealing with anything, and I'm not a big ruminator, but if I'm dealing with something and I'm thinking about something a lot, and then I have 8 straight sessions in a row and I'm dealing with all that, I'm not thinking about anything but my clients and what my job is. And so that's a good break from those kind of things. So
It's an interesting break, but it's a good one.
but yeah, my break is always wild. But like even going to a job, just getting into a routine where you're on cruise control, just to get away from that, isolating and sitting there and thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yeah.
One of the best things you can do is, unless you overdo it, is talk it out with friends. Just have a discussion, let them know how you're feeling. But be careful to not get into what this one doctor referred to as do not co-ruminate.
Yes.
That's the key. And explain the concepts of don't you both start dwelling on problems and being stuck on them. You're like, yeah, I remember that. I'm going through the same thing. Which I can't believe she said that. You can actually have a sort of a reverse effect of what you're trying to do with that.
And by the way, there's something that you touched on there. I want to bring it out before we move on down the list. You talked for a moment there about how it can be good to let something go, to get it out.
Yes.
I'm reminded also of the story of the guy at the gym who, for the next 2 months was getting it out and just kept telling the same story over and over again. That was that form of rumination. The thing that occurs to me is we talk about letting it out, getting it out. Somebody who's ruminating on it, they never really get it out, do they?
No,
because once you get it out, it's gone. So if they keep going back, they never really got it out.
Well, and that's what these techniques were looking about breaking, because when you're in rumination, that's the incredible sort of difficult situation, because you think you're getting it out by thinking about it, but you're just getting stuck in the loop over it. And that's what I have one young man that said, Joel, this makes me think I'm going crazy. I can't, I don't want to think about this. He said, I don't even care anymore, but I can't quit thinking about it.
Yeah. In other words, the rumination becomes a reinforcing process to keep refocusing on the thing that poisoned you in the first place. And
I brought up the point, again, with one of my friends, the idea that rumination possibly, and he never thought about this, but there could be a dopamine reward system as well that reinforces rumination.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, and he said that's an interesting theory, and it's something that could be taking place. So if that's the case, it almost becomes addictive, like for some people.
Well, yeah, because if we're talking about something that is a relatively negative process and it's feeding you a positive reward, that's a scary concept.
Yeah. The next one that this psychologist from Arizona that's brilliant, written several books, she suggested expressive writing. Journaling, writing, just going in depth about what it is. And then, some people will burn the page, some people will, whatever that is. But she feels that when you put stuff in writing, she doesn't mean typing it on paper, but using a pen to pad.
Handwriting, yeah,
handwriting, that has a real big therapeutic effect. And many of her clients that are ruminators find that effective. So she was a big believer in that.
I would agree with her, by the way, because there was a time when I was trying to justify the idea of journaling by typing, because I'm much better at typing than handwriting. And in fact, one of my issues for the longest time, and still is to an extent, is that if I start handwriting, within moments, my hand starts to cramp up. I'm gripping the pen so tightly
Yes.
that I just can't help myself on that. So for the longest time, I wouldn't journal. I mean, I refused to even try because I figured that's just setting myself up for some physical pain in my hand, and that's the last thing I really wanted. I went through a boot camp course with my friend David Strickle that he called the Taya boot camp that required you to do some journaling. And so I said, okay, I'll do some journaling. I really don't want to do this, but it got me into it a little bit. And then I left it for a while. And then I came back to it because of another guest who came on the show. And my point is, I very slowly got to the point where I was actually willing to get a journal book so I could do journaling in it. And what I found that I do with it now, I did try journaling every single day for about 3 days, and I lost interest in doing that. But what I have found is if there are times when something happens where I find myself going into a rumination cycle, and you know what I mean by that, something where you can just feel you're just kind of pulling yourself into this thing, or you're being pulled in, depending on how you want to look at it. But you're pulling into this thing, and you're realizing, okay, this is a big deal. This is something I need to let go of. I'll get my journal out and I'll write a page about it. And that's about all I'm willing to do. I won't do more journaling beyond that. But that alone, just writing that one page, is usually, not always, but usually enough to snap me out of it, to basically let go of the darn thing.
In a full confession here, I often recommend journaling a lot. I personally, the only thing I ever write anymore is I do my morning 5 things I'm grateful for. I do that by hand.
Right. Yeah.
And I have 30 years of that. Literally have 30 years.
Which is impressive. Yes.
Yeah. And if you look at, the degrading form of my handwriting, it is degraded to the point where it's not readable. So
like most doctors would have trouble with it. I get it.
Yeah. It's I know what it says, but I could read everything. And then over the last 10 years, because I don't write anywhere else. It's the only place I write, because I don't get any practice. And like you're saying, if I hold a pen, it feels awkward. My hand will cramp up.
Right.
And I could do the 5 things every morning, but I don't write. So I recommend journaling a lot. To be honest with you, I don't. But it's good. It's a good practice. I just don't.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is, most people want you to journal regularly. I found I don't need to journal regularly. I just need to journal when I need to journal.
That's
when I limit myself to, and that actually enables me to do it rather than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to blow this off." Forget that.
Yeah. The other category under journaling, this is different than just reframing. So the same therapist recommends reframing journaling. So
really?
You take you do the reframe on paper.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, just the exercises about what went on. Here's what my brain is telling me. Let me reframe that. And you do that as many times, you do that several times. And the reframing journaling, sort of in her mind, and I can see where this happens, this is an effective way to get access to the subconscious brain where a lot of this stuff is stuck. So
I've done it. I just realized I never did it in terms of reframing.
Yeah.
But what I have done is to do that in terms of attracting law of attraction, which is really the same thing. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
But it's really the same thing. It's reframing the journaling into what I want it to be instead, which helps me, to attract the thing that I want, but it also helps me to break the cycle.
And here's a couple things that there's a couple of apps. Headspace, these are some people recommended these. Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer. Those are meditation and mindfulness tools. There's one called Mood Notes. That's a CBT-based tool. And Reflectively is a journaling mood tracker. So those are the last 3 things of sort of apps that people recommended. But it's a pretty good list of things to do. Everybody responds differently. There isn't one thing that I think works completely for everybody. I think you got to find your combination of it. But the good news is you do need to take action to break the cycle. The cycle is not likely to break itself.
And by the way, thank you for putting the list together, because we all know that's not a normal Joel thing to prepare for a show in advance, and you actually took the time to do it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I really am excited about this topic, and just because it affects my clients so deeply, and then when I started looking, we have a tendency to look through, I've told you before, the doctors that I think, tend to favor bipolar. I'll send people that are bipolar to them, or,
Mhm.
there's doctors that have, so, we all have a lens that we look through, and I like to have a lens that I make sure I like to change my lens when I look at a client. So I am basically filtering. I'm doing, sort of asking questions to see if we have potential rumination going on here. And I've never done it this way. And the percentage of my clients that are ruminators is really high.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. Now, how long have you been kind of field testing that?
Probably about 2 months, but it's
Months?
really gained momentum. And
Okay.
so I have some basic things like people come to me with whatever problems. I'll also ask questions about if somebody says my life's a shambles, I am depressed. So I'll ask questions about substance use, alcohol,
Sure.
relationships, general health questions. I'll ask a lot of things, and I'll get very specific. Even with an addiction, do you gamble? Do you do the? So I have filters that I go through to try to see. And when I describe rumination, usually, most of my things that I'm going through as I'm doing screens for these things, everybody will, yeah, some people here, but rumination really rates really, really high. It's running
Interesting.
it unscientifically, but just what I've been doing the last couple of months is, probably 60 to 70% of my clients have active rumination going on.
It almost makes me wonder if one of the reasons that people will cop to that is that it's perceived to be a relatively safe answer,
Yeah, that's a good point.
because, well, you don't hear a whole lot of negativity about, well, God, he ruminates all the time. I mean,
Right.
and you don't see, well, not many people read psychological journals, but you don't see like social media posts about, well, this guy, his biggest problem is that he's a ruminator. He just never stops ruminating. He's ruining his life. You never see anything like that. So
No.
there's really no social thing against rumination. So I can see why people would be willing to say, well, yeah, I do that.
Yeah, rumination is it's sort of that low hanging fruit, the non defensive. When people say, "Yeah, I do that," sometimes people will protect their addiction. No, I don't drink too much, or I don't
Mm-mm.
do this, and you have to eventually find out they have 4 DUIs, and there's
Yeah,
clearly a problem.
yeah.
But and this is like, yeah, there isn't a built-in pushback to rumination that much. One of the terms that used to be used, I don't know when we quit using it. I love the term, but we psychiatrists used to refer to people as neurotic.
Oh, yeah. Neurosis used to be a big word. Yeah.
Yeah, rumination and being neurotic there's some overlap there.
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
people who are neurotic are just just constantly and thinking, and so you see that and you're thinking, I love to just, it's about functioning of the brain, the quality of life, and rumination is an impediment to the quality of life that most people just tend to think is normal stress or it's normal way of dealing with it. There's also I have a couple of clients that are super resilient. They've been through a lot. They have a great mindset, and they don't ruminate at all. They're just able
Mm.
to, So I pick their brains too, what works for them.
Interesting you should mention that. I was in a conversation with somebody just in the last few days, and we weren't talking about rumination, but we were talking about stuff that's, mentally oriented. And particularly, we were talking about this particular person was making a point about differences between men's brains and women's brains in the context of primary relationships. And the point that they were making was that women tend to be all over the place thinking about 15 things at a time, and men tend to be just on one thing, which it's a concept I challenge, but that's not my point for bringing that up. The reason I'm bringing it up is that it honed in on a very specific thing that I think happens with both men and women. And that is to have what they call the monkey brain. The Buddhists call it the monkey brain, where the constant chattering that goes on all the time. And I used to have that. I actually found a way to overcome it using mirror work. But while I had it, I found that the chattering, it wasn't just random chattering. It was kind of like rumination on steroids, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean. It was kind of like taking the ruminating process and just throwing at myself in 1,000 different ways for all those thoughts that were going through my mind. And literally one of the best things I did, I think I've told you about the mirror work that I did to calm the mind down. When that mind calmed down, it took about 17 to 18 days of the mirror work before I noticed a significant change. And about 30 to 40 days out, it was gone, which was shocking to me. And it largely hasn't come back. But I still recall what it felt like. I recall what it felt like to have that chatter going on all the time. And it makes me wonder how many of the people who cop to, the 60 to 70% who say that they have rumination going on, how many of them have a monkey brain thing going on? I wonder what kind of correlation there is going there.
That I think the correlation, I mean, that's amazing. I've never thought of that, to be honest with you. That adds a sort of another layer, because that is that, it's now I have a monkey brain, but mine is very entertaining. It's not.
Well, yours is a completely different kind. I've never actually encountered one like yours before.
Yeah. Mine is hilarious. It's literally like
it really is.
It really is. I make myself laugh constantly. So my monkey brain is very entertaining. But I see that a lot. And one of the things that Matt, by the way, can you give us just a brief synopsis of mirror work? Because there's a lot of
yeah, sure. Yeah. Mirror work is essentially a way of building your own self-confidence about yourself. And the way it works is you set yourself, the first day is always the hardest one, by the way. And I love actually telling this story, because I get to describe what my first day of mirror work was actually like. Because what I was trying to do is I was trying to look myself in the eye in a mirror and with a straight face say, I love you. And to actually look in my own eyes, deep in my own eyes, to say it. The first day went like this. I love you. That was the end of the session.
Wow.
The second day was a little bit better, but the first day was just like, primitive.
Wow. That's wild.
But the point is that if you can get yourself, and I was pushing the extremely hard, but you don't have to go with I love you. What you really need to do is just focus on telling yourself what you're doing right. Focus on the things that are going well in your life, and then reinforcing it to yourself in your own eyes. If you do that every single day, over a period of time, you build your own self-confidence about who you are and what your self-identity is. And that has a very interesting effect. It does tend to calm the monkey brain over time. And by the way, I got this idea from Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup series.
Oh, I love that.
He's the one who presented, and like, damn, it works. It works really well.
Well, from in the law of attraction, the use of the law of attraction changed my life, and I use it. As we know, that's sort of the point of the show, even though we don't talk about it that much anymore. And the influence of all of this, how on emotions and how you're feeling, is clearly connected. And it's impossible to have the life that you're wanting when your thoughts and your emotions are suggesting the opposite. And it's really important to work on this. And I just don't. And it's not just law of attraction, but the quality of life. It's having a quality of life. I can't imagine. I had obviously some very dark times in my life, and I'm so grateful that I learned to move beyond that, to learn to be appreciative. To have the life I have today seems impossible from where I was at before. So the people, anybody out there struggling, this is a really important thing to maybe put into your research and try the techniques that work for you, because you can't have a high quality of life and be a ruminator. And I think there's nothing more important than how you feel about yourself and the perspective of the world, because there's there's a dialogue going out there, if you're paying attention to, that things aren't going well. Right. And that this could, ruminating on that, about that alone, could create that. So there's another message, and it works really well. So I hope this is really helpful to people, but this has been on my mind a lot lately.
Are you actually saying you've been ruminating on this?
Yes.
I'm just asking,
Yeah. No, I have too many other monkeys taking place.
Okay.
They won't allow it to do that. So
gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, it's nice to have a little competition up there to kind of shake things up.
Exactly.
Especially your case, because you have some of the most amazingly funny stories I've ever heard. And I kind of imagine, what's it like to live in Joel Elston's head because you have you've told all these stories. I'm sure they're going through your head all the time. Uh, I guess it's not really confusing. It is amusing. Is it distracting?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay though. It's especially when I have an idea that leads to an idea that leads to an idea, and then I have all the experience I have, then I start seeing scenarios where it matches up with previous
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
So it's exciting to do all that.
Yeah.
It's something that I wake up this is not because what I do for a living, but I wake up every day. I'm excited about my life. I'm fascinated about what's going to happen today. It's every day. Today's Monday. Mondays are always wild for me. I love them.
You
Always
post
something.
more posts. Now, I haven't followed a lot lately, but I remember from, like over the last few years, you post a lot of posts. Every time the Monday comes along, you have to put a post out about how Monday is your favorite day. I mean, do you ever miss a week? I don't think you ever do.
Well,
other than when you're on
Facebook.
vacation from Facebook entirely, but beyond that,
I'm not on Facebook anymore. But
you're not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and
Instagram. Okay.
Yeah, so I do a similar type thing on Instagram. Facebook just got weird. But
yeah, I hear you.
In Instagram, it doesn't seem to have that. Also, I started a TikTok account. I would love to have Law of Attraction on TikTok and LOA Today on TikTok and Instagram. I think that would be a great platform for us. So that's
actually Jen was putting clips of our stuff on TikTok for a while. So there is some
Let me find it, and if it's ever possible to put this show on TikTok or leading to it, I would love that.
Yeah, well, that's what she does. She hasn't been doing it lately. I asked her to work on different things, but she had for a while been taking clips that she would select from each of the different episodes and posting them as TikTok clips. So
that's great.
It's there.
I'll find LOA Today on that and do that. But I'm becoming sort of used to that platform. I like it.
You like the short video thing? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Well, this has also been interesting. Thank you for bringing up the topic.
Fantastic.
I can promise you one thing: I'm not going to ruminate on it.
Well, that's
try very hard not to.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's so good to see you. I can't wait next week. If I have another topic pop up, I'll let you know.
I'm going to be in shock if I get another 2 texts 2 weeks in a row. That would blow me away. I mean, seriously. It surprised me. I mean, I love it, but
it was funny. I said, "Can we talk about rumination and make that the topic?" And you go, "Yeah." And I said, "Can we make the topic one word, rumination?" You go, "Yes."
Well, that's what I made. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what Jen's going to make it. I'll have to kind of reinforce that for her. But you and I made it rumination. So that
and that's the main thing. It's just I know Jen takes everything. She does a great job. It's not critical of her.
Yeah.
But it's just this idea that sometimes when we're doing a topic, there's a specific direction to go, and we need to direct that. And this week was just rumination. I'm
going to encourage her. No, not to ruminate on it, to focus on it. How about that?
All right,
that's been great. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.